Hello, humans. Welcome to The Front Line, a leadership and business podcast brought to you by Perrera Corporate Services, an Isle of Man-based fiduciary provider. My name is Martin Hall, and thanks for listening. Today, we're joined by Richard from Tag Alliance Network. Nearly tongue-tied there. Welcome, Richard. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Martin. It's a pleasure being here today with you.
Thank you. So, just a little bit of background. Where did you grow up? What's your homeland?
Well, you probably can't tell from my accent, but I was born and grew up in Edinburgh, Scotland.
All right. Okay.
No, I'm actually from Scotland originally.
Right.
And my father's a surgeon, and he moved to Canada in the early 70s. And I was schooled on Vancouver Island. Then finally went to university out in Ontario, Canada.
Right.
And ended up in France, purportedly doing studies in public international law, but I was really spending most of my time playing rugby there.
Right.
And so I was playing with the racing club in Paris.
Okay. Is that what took you to Paris then, or took you to France? The rugby side?
Well, if you were to ask my parents, it was to continue my education. From my perspective, it was to continue my rugby, and which led me back to Scotland, where I obtained a British law degree.
Okay.
And continued to play rugby at that time for Scotland at the student level and with the British students.
All right. Okay.
And then I eventually got back to Canada, did a Canadian law degree at Dalhousie University in Halifax, and was continuing to play rugby at the national level with the Canadian team. And that's what led me to Vancouver, where I've been for the last almost 28 years.
Right. Okay. So just to jump back then, when you went to Paris, aside from the rugby, you were studying law there. Was that what kind of area of law were you looking at that stage?
Yeah, public international.
What made you go into law, I guess, is another follow-up question.
Well, that's interesting because I initially went into medicine.
Okay.
And I realized fairly early on that I wasn't suited for it. And I preferred international affairs, and that led me into the practice of law. And then at the end of the day, what sort of to go full circle, when I did start in practice, my firm that I was with for quite a significant part of my career specialized in medical malpractice defense.
All right. Okay.
So I was there able to at least have some connection to medical practice.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And is that McCarthy law? Is that, or perhaps not the quite correct name? But, yeah.
No, I was initially at McCarthy Tetro, which is a national firm.
Okay.
And then I was poached away to Harper Gray, which is one of our members of Tag Law and the Tag Alliances.
Okay.
And I was a barrister there for about 20 years.
Right.
And
okay.
a partner with that firm.
So I assume, again, not having done a law degree myself, when you move to another country and you've then got to obviously learn you adapt what you know, obviously the fundamentals, and then it's top and tail, I guess, picking up the laws of the various places you're in.
Yeah, you have to requalify. So
right.
I had a British degree, even though we rely on English common law here in Canada and most of the provinces other than Quebec. A lot of the courses were compatible, but I still had to take some Canadian courses to qualify.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So then you moved on to, and the opportunity came with Tag. How did that come about? And I presume that was a big change for you.
Yes. I had brought my firm into Tag Law in 2002. And so we were very involved in the organization. The firm went from being a mid-sized litigation-focused firm to a global firm overnight once we came into the alliance.
Oh, right, okay.
We started to receive files from all over the world. We were able to compete with national and international firms for that work. And it really allowed the firm to grow and develop, bring in a very robust and dynamic business law program. And so the firm went from about 54 lawyers at the time we joined to, I think, almost 90 lawyers now.
Right.
And has really strengthened its corporate commercial department and corporate commercial litigation department as well.
Right.
We and through that, I was attending a lot of the international conferences and regional meetings of the organization. We were also, I joined the advisory board. The founder, Peter Appleton Jones, was a former IBM executive who 20 odd years ago had tried to get law firms in various jurisdictions to deal with legal issues that he was facing.
Right.
And was finding it difficult to find fully vetted firms in other jurisdictions that were local and independent firms that could provide the type of advice he needed. So he decided to create his own network and was very successful in doing it. In 2003, he was a bit of a visionary. He decided that he wanted to go multidisciplinary, so he brought on an accounting network and it slowly integrated into a very strong and dynamic and multidisciplinary organization.
Yeah.
About, I think it was 7 years ago now, I can't believe it was so long ago, he approached my wife and I. My wife is a chartered professional accountant, formerly with KPMG. She had been practicing in both the public and private accounting space for a number of years. And he said, I'm 77 years old. Who better to take over an international alliance of lawyers and accountants than a lawyer and an accountant? We looked at it, and both of us. I had been a partner with my firm for many years, and had a very strong practice, and was still enjoying the work that I was doing. My wife was working in the private equity side, but we saw this as a tremendous opportunity. We had always loved our interactions and relationships developed through the alliance. And, after considering it and talking to, our bank and other advisors, we eventually took over the organization.
Right.
And so that was in 2015. I can't believe it's been 5 years, but they've gone by very quickly. And
Yeah.
and since then, it was a fabulous transition because it was fully supported by the membership. We had developed some very deep personal relationships with members, not only on the professional level but on a personal level.
Yeah.
And they were very helpful through the transition to continue to build the organization. We were able to bring on a number of close connections onto our advisory board, and they provided us with the support, mentorship to be able to continue to lead the organization forward.
Yeah.
And so we've taken it, I think at the time that we took over, there was about 230 members. We're almost 300 members today,
Right.
in 5 years. And then the average annual aggregate revenue of all of our members has gone from about $3.1 billion to 4.8
Wow.
as of 2019. And
Right.
and hasn't, although we brought on a number of new members, we've really been able to upgrade members where necessary, bring on very prominent firms. We decided to target some of the top US accounting firms because we thought they would bring in real added value to the organization. And it did, in that it's brought in increased work engagements between all of the members.
Yeah.
And another thing we did was slowly over the last 5 years, we brought on a number of strategic partners. Peregrine, for one, with their corporate services and trust company, is one of our TAG strategic partners. And we brought on a number of other organizations, either financial institutions, insurance brokerages, other corporate service trust companies that have really given us a competitive advantage over other multidisciplinary networks and even the traditional legal and accounting networks, in that those organizations not only want to market and sell their products and services that are vital to lawyers and accountants, but also they retain our lawyers and accountants worldwide, or they drive their clients towards our members if they have legal and accounting needs in various jurisdictions around the world.
Right. So I was going to kind of ask, and that kind of partly answers the question there about TAG. Obviously, there are a number of networks out there, and what you feel the key skills that the networks and specifically TAG offer firms that want to join networks.
Yeah, well, it's different. There used to be just the traditional legal networks, and that was more referral based. And say with the accounting network, the traditional accounting networks, it was more for professional development, so more technical training was provided by the networks. Ours is different because ours is based more on business development, connections. You want to have trusted advisors around the world. If I have a client who's got operations in the Middle East or in Asia, to be able to send them to trusted advisors that are fully vetted firms in those locations to provide the same type of level of service that are demanded of our clients and locally. And also, it provided an opportunity to develop real quality personal relationships with lawyers and accountants around the world. The best thing was being able to have a client come into my office, have a need to do an investigation in Poland, and be able to just pick up the phone and call the lawyer or accountant that I knew in that jurisdiction.
Yeah,
and that provides a great retention tool for your client.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's certainly a tool I've seen over my time working in networks, is that ability, to pick the phone up to an alliance member somewhere else in the globe and know that they've been through the various processes, and it's not a cold call in essence, is it? It's even if you've not spoken to them before, there's that commonality already.
Right. What it does, what our organization and a lot of these alliances provide, some of them are just a database of names. And they don't care where somebody's located. Whereas for us, particularly with the lawyers, they require territorial exclusivity. The accountants, not as much, although we still grant them specific jurisdictions as their territorial exclusivity. Although we don't require that our members have to use our firms exclusively. We recognized early on and that everybody's got their different business development focuses, and so we want people to have connections wherever they are. If we have vacancies, then we send them to other organizations that we work with to get that advice in those countries where we don't have a member. We're pretty well covered because we have members in over 110 countries. But we're not just growing and adding members for the sake of it. We're not just getting the biggest member
you bring it in to make sure they add value.
Yeah, well, we're also creating a community, and that's the one distinguishing factor about the TAG Alliance is it's a very strong community. The firms that come in are, we only choose them if they're a fit for the organization, very like-minded in their approach and culture, and culture is key. And what you'll find with our organization as opposed to some of the others is that it is a tremendous community. A great example is I went to the Isle of Man with my father following a European regional meeting in Belfast. And he always wanted to get back to the Isle of Man because he had his honeymoon there in those
Oh,
days.
right. Okay.
That was the place to go.
Yeah. Back in the day.
And what I did, I organized a meeting of our 3 members on the island. So you have Peregrine as our TAG strategic partner, Brown Crane, our TIAG International Accounting Group member, and DQ Advocates as our legal member. And we got them in. I did a presentation to them on unlocking the benefits of the organization, and talked about how critical it was to have this close relationship amongst all of our members within a specific jurisdiction. And one of the comments was that we really appreciate you coming here because this is the first time we've ever gotten together.
Yeah.
And I thought, you guys work 5 minutes from each other.
Yeah. A long way, 5 minutes in the Isle of Man.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But what was incredible from that was we went back and we held a regional meeting in Douglas 3 years later, or maybe two or 3 years later. And the 3 firms on the Isle of Man got up and did a presentation talking about their new integration and their collaboration together, the cross-marketing, and also the ability to go out and market and business develop on the island together, and how they've now gotten involved with the Ministry of Enterprise and some of the work that they were doing jointly with them. And it was extraordinary. It floored us, the level of interaction that they've now had since that date. And so it was fabulous to see.
And I suppose on that point of networking, for our listeners, if you had to give advice on networking and skills and things that people should be looking at, what from your years of experience, what would kind of tips be around that?
Yeah, what I found is you have to be proactive, and a lot of lawyers and accountants are mostly reactive.
Right.
And what I would always tell everybody, my biggest files came out of introductions I had obtained at international and regional meetings, or just by calling up lawyers and accountants that I knew had clients within my jurisdiction, and clients who operate around the world, but particularly have subsidiaries or maybe a parent office in Vancouver. And just by those discussions, I was able to get leads that, certainly I would have to go out and land the client. But one of the real benefits was especially if you're at an international conference, you can contact the client there and you've got that personal introduction. So a great example, I was at a conference in London, and I knew an environmental lawyer who worked for Vivendi, some of the largest waste management companies in the world. I knew he had a lot of multinational clients that operated in Canada and the United States. And I just asked him, I said, do you have any personal contacts that you can introduce me to within my jurisdiction? He said, the only person I can think of is somebody who's in Washington State, in a place called Bothell, Washington. Well, I happen to know Bothell because I go down through there to see my brother who lives in Seattle. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, would you provide an introduction? He said, yeah, absolutely. Let's give him a call. So, because it was behind the time and when we were in London in the evening, we gave him a call. It was early morning in Washington, and we had a really nice chat with him. I ended up going out and meeting with him in Seattle. And from that, we ended up handling their largest acquisition ever of the largest environmental consultancy in Canada, which led to all kinds of litigation where they owned a remediation facility in the province of Saskatchewan. We had to deal with that. With the disinvestment of it, we had to deal with some of the other liabilities, also severance and workplace issues with respect to all of their offices. And we ended up having to retain every tag law member across Canada. So seven of them. And eventually the company moved it back into the States, and they needed advice. We were able to use our our members throughout the United States. At the end of the day, the firm still acts for them, handling all of their workplace issues. They probably billed over $5 million.
Right. Okay.
And they've had this tremendous relationship. That all came out of a 5-minute conversation in London.
Like you say, being at the start there, being proactive.
Right, and it happens all the time. What we say to our members before they attend our events, or even for virtual events, is have an intention of who you want to speak to.
Yeah.
Understand who has industry within your jurisdiction, and then go out and obtain those contacts. Very simply done.
Yeah.
And get those introductions. As long as you've got that door opener, you'll be able to, usually if you've got any business development savvy, you'll be able to land the client.
Yeah.
And you know, we've seen that over and over again. That's what's happening now. And so in a lot of the meetings, they discuss mutual clients or clients that they can provide introductions to in these various jurisdictions. And you know, I know I've talked to Basil about that many times when he's going down to Africa. We're looking for recommendations. We're putting him in touch with specific organizations there. Yeah. And that's one of the things that you know, one of my strengths when I was at my former firm was I was the marketing partner, and it was looking at new ways to drive work to the firm locally. And by joining this international alliance, it really helped increasing the volume of work coming into the firm, but also developing connections through the organization with other firms around the world. And they would drive their clients or prospective clients who had operations in Vancouver to us. But now I'm able to do it on a global level. So one of the things that our organization takes pride in doing is being able to go out and approach multinationals, international organizations and associations and let them know what we provide. And it's that local independent firm that's very, it's something that they see now, particularly with budgetary concerns, as important rather than going to, you know, the big four or international law firms. And so we've seen a number of international organizations that we've approached now using our members in numerous jurisdictions around the world.
Interesting. Okay. And I was just going to ask, I suppose, more on I know one of the things you're very interested, switch subject slightly, is in coaching. Maybe just expand a little bit on that and how you
what we do for it. Sure. We one of the things I'll do, and it's something that we're going to have to switch to virtually, but we haven't had any issue with that because we as an organization work remotely ourselves. We've got an office in Vancouver with a number of our staff here. We've got a team in St. Petersburg, Florida, where the founder of the organization had set up a base, and then an office in London. And so we work remotely through those offices, and it's worked quite seamlessly. What we would do in the past when international travel was open was I would go and conduct presentations like I did in the Isle of Man to all of our members in those jurisdictions and bring them together, and then provide them with tips and ideas and coaching on how to get the most out of the organization, and not just to look at it from the referral point, which a lot of people join these organizations and just think the phone's going to start ringing and work's going to come in the door. No, the firms that are successful are the ones that go out and they're, as I said, are proactive, develop these deep personal relationships with other members, and are trusted, and those members have confidence in them to send their clients. And they're always ones looking at new ways to get work into their organization. And then we always promote that. And it's just, for me, it's through communication and connection that you're going to be successful.
Yeah. So interesting you mentioned, because I was just going to ask about communication. I presume what your views, or you're again sharing your experience of communication, and certainly around the globe and different cultures. How do you again, advice or tips for people listening around those subjects?
Yeah, well, I, I don't know. I find it fairly simple. I think so long as you've got a background of relatedness with somebody around the globe, it's very easy to communicate with them.
Yeah, right.
All of our members are competent in English, and they love it when we come to their jurisdiction. They want to show it off. They want to show you how successful they're doing within that jurisdiction. And what this has done with the new virtual world is allowed us to develop more personal relationships with them.
Yeah.
It's incredible when you see their backgrounds or their family members, or just the books they have behind them when they're on Zoom. It's incredible what you can learn about a person, and
Yeah.
we're finding we're developing very stronger personal relationships with our members as a result of that.
Yeah, so you're adapting quite quickly I know obviously a lot of firms are adapting quickly to the
Well, we had to, because we were meant to be running an international conference in Philadelphia in May, early May. We invoked our force majeure clause on that, and that showed you the strength of the organization. We had a very prominent local tag law law firm in Philadelphia that really assisted us in providing the leverage with all of our service providers in Philadelphia to be able to cancel the contract, terminate the contracts, and cancel the conference. It was a tricky time for us because we have, when you're organizing these events, you have significant pre-conference deposits out there, in the $500,000 range. And so to be able to recover those quickly in the face of a pandemic that's causing all this loss to particularly destination management companies, hotels, and event planners, we had to get in there quickly. And first of all, understand, can we invoke the provision? Learned a lot about force majeure and impossibility clauses at the time, but having that local leverage certainly helped in being able to cancel it. But then we had to quickly adapt by converting it to a virtual international conference, which we did. And we did it over the month of May. We pivoted very quickly because we understood the technology. We'd been working with Zoom for a number of years now. And it proved to be very successful and very welcomed by our members that we were able to do it so quickly and seamlessly. We did it twice a week for 3 hours on each day. The attendance numbers were tremendous, and really showed how quickly we could adapt to technology.
And I assume ultimately, like most businesses, a lot of that will just be kept, won't it? The virtual conferences to save travel, save cost, convenience. Because not used to it, but accepted it's a productive way of doing it.
Yeah, I think so. Although you just can't beat those in-person meetings.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what we've learned through this process is, everybody's enjoyed although they're getting a bit of fatigue with all of the number of virtual meetings and webinars, and it's usually when it's more relaxed. We had a tag virtual open house for 16 hours on one of the days, and that proved to be the more engaging session that we had, and allowed our members to come in and just talk to each other and express empathy and compassion and talk about some of the issues that they're facing, and it was really welcomed by our members. I expect we'll continue with the digital format, virtual format. Maybe some of our regional meetings and other ones while these restrictions are in place for travel. We'll continue with it.
And do you miss law?
Well, I still hold my license to practice. I was still had a couple of cases left over when I when I left my firm, I'd promised the clients that I would continue with them.
Yeah, right.
But fortunately, those have settled now.
Yeah, right.
I've been asked primarily because of this pandemic and what it's caused for the world economy to come back to, I've been approached by about 4 different law firms to come and do some insolvency litigation for them because
Right.
they're being
Okay.
overwhelmed. I have no desire to do that. I'm really enjoying what I'm continuing to do.
Yeah.
We want to continue to build. There's still lots of opportunity. We're getting applications in daily from firms around the world
Right.
looking at going, because with global immobility now, they need those connections in other jurisdictions to be able to help their clients navigate all of the new government regulations, stimulus packages, restrictions, all the new guidelines for how, return to work and for workplace issues. Also, if you're an auditor and you're having to do an audit count, in the past, you just jump on a plane, go out and check out the factory. Well, you can't do that now. So you have to have somebody locally there to handle it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those connections are critical. And so more, as I said, we're seeing a great boost in our recruitment because firms are looking to have those connections.
Yeah, right.
And so it was a real surprise to me, because you would have thought with some of the financial issues that, a number of members and a number of organizations are facing, that they would put things on pause. But, they're recognizing that there's still growth opportunities available so long as they have those connections.
Yeah, no, interesting. And outside of work, what do you get up to?
Yeah, well, I play a lot of tennis and golf. Fortunately, the golf courses are open. I used to play. I played a lot of golf with Basil, and I love is it Castletown on the Isle of Man, and they've got some tremendous courses there.
What's the handicap?
Changes on any given day. I'm around a 13 to 15.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty good from what I know of golf, which isn't a lot.
Well, but not playing for a while hasn't helped. But we can get back to that. But in one of the things that being at home, we've now got our 4 children back here, so they're all university age, but that's taken a bit of getting used to, since we were meant to be empty nesters.
Yeah, well, you got rid of them.
Yeah, we thought we got rid of them. I play the piano, so I've been able to play a bit more than I normally would.
Okay.
Because in the normal world pre-COVID, I was traveling a lot. Traveling between offices, doing presentations at firms, going and recruiting, attending the international events. I did about 200 days of travel last year.
Right. Wow.
To be with members. Well, that's now been cut off, and so I'm spending a lot more time at home. It's giving me the opportunity to.
And what's the piano? Is that just a hobby?
I started when I was young, and I've kept it up, fortunately, and so now it's giving me the opportunity to play a bit more.
Yeah, I don't think I can ever see myself playing the piano. I don't think I've got the coordination. For just a couple of final points for our listeners, if you had any kind of book recommendations, whether that's business oriented or just what tickles you?
A couple of the books I've been reading lately. One was a book by Gihan Perrera, who was our keynote in Sydney, Australia, in last October, and he's written a book, Disruption by Design, which is which is obviously a pre-COVID written book, but he's a futurist, and it's an appropriate book to be reading at this time. It deals with leading the change in a fast-changing world.
Okay. And
even though Gihan didn't predict the global pandemic when writing the book, he understood that in the modern world, leaders have to be proactive, and to innovate to stay ahead of any disruption.
Yeah.
So it's a great book to read
Okay.
at this time. I've also been reading the book TED Talks, which is the official TED guide to public speaking,
Okay.
And the one thing it teaches is how storytelling is very powerful at getting your message out, and it's been a great book.
I'll get the link
Also,
and add them to the footnote to the podcast. So
sure,
want to
sure.
dig them out. Yeah. That TED Talk one does sound interesting. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and then the last books I've been reading on the fiction side, been written by a very good friend of mine who's actually an emergency room doc in Vancouver.
Right.
And he's an international bestseller. So he writes when he's on the night shift, he writes. And so he's written a number of books. Some have been converted into movies. One is called Pandemic, which is appropriate this time. The other is called We All Fall Down.
Okay,
both international bestsellers talking about these pandemics, and We All Fall Down, it's talking about the Black Plague and an antibiotic resistant plague that comes out, and it's got a whole historical story behind it. It's a fabulous book.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's a very talented guy. So it's
What's his name?
Daniel Kalla, Kalla. Scare the hell out of you with reading, but it's similar to watching the movie Contagion. I watched it with my kids a couple of
it's spooky, isn't it?
Months ago, right before this, and you thought, okay, this is too close to the bone.
Yeah, I'd never even heard of it, and it's on Netflix, and I caught it 2 weeks ago, and it was like it was recorded last week. It was just everything from washing your hands to social distance, and to all the language that all this new language that we've learned in the last 9 weeks.
And people coming out with these miracle cures to boost the market. We know about that, don't we?
So if the listeners want to reach out to you, either yourself and or the network, the alliance, what's the best ways to do that?
So I can be reached at Richard@Tag Alliances. That's alliances with an S.com.
Yeah.
And our website, which has all of our contact information as well, is www.tagalliances.com. Again, Tag Alliances with an S.
Yeah.
The alliance, the reason it's the alliance is it's made up of 3 divisions. Tag Law, which is our legal division, which has about 165 law firms. TIAG, which is the International Accounting Group, which has 130 accounting firms around the world. And then TAG SP, our Strategic Partner Division, which Peregrine is part of, which has a number of members that make up the organization.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, we'll add them to our show notes on the various channels this comes out on. So appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me. No,
pleasure. And as you're a lot of hours behind it, we're heading into the weekend, and you can finish your day working. Not to boast, but it's thank you, Richard, and much appreciated for joining us.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, folks.